All right, here we are, Daniel Schoenewald Collection. Big supporter of Iconic, a really close friend of mine. Starting off with this really cool Cowie Alan Milliard bike. Added an extra cylinder on it. It's a 1000cc H2. Great way to start. I would do anything to ride that one. It's my buddy Matt. We're freezing today, aren't we, Matt? A little cold. All right, let's move on. Let's see all the bikes. He's a big Cowie fan, so let's run Alba, say hello. One of my closest mates right there. Let's move down. Mach 3, H1 Cowie, another H1. Daniel is all about having every color. So let's start the H2s here, which is the 750 two-stroke. Can't beat purple. There we go, keep them going. H2, 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 and they keep going. There we go here. He's started adding a few more 900s since I first met him. And typical Daniel style, he likes to make sure he has all the colors. There you go, they keep going. These are really collectible, especially in the Japan market right now. We have a bunch of clients in Japan that keep asking for them. Here's a Z1. We have 3 Z1s at Iconic, all of which need love. This one, however, is the turbo. So this is one and a half, isn't it, Ted?
Yep.
Ted's very big into cameras. GPZ 1100, GPZ. A couple Ninjas, Ninja Turbo. This is, I don't know if it's one of his son's race bikes, but his son is Tristan, is actually quite quick. Actually really quick, to be honest. And then let's go over here. So over here we have the Honda CB with the Japanese kit to make it look like a vintage bike, which I pointed out last time I was here. And if you don't know Daniel, he's a huge Triumph and mostly Norton fan. So you're gonna see a bunch of Nortons. The thing about Daniel's place, though, more than anything else, I shouldn't say more than anything else, but it's also cool, is even in his shelves, he has really neat stuff stashed away. So, you know, like looking out here, like, okay, that's cool, whatever. Lucky Strike GSXR, that came that way. If, we had one at Iconic way back when. Tail section, number 21. There's the tail that goes with that upper for that S-Rad. All little neat stuff just stashed away. There's the side fairings. Best country in the world right there. I'm going back in a couple months. Haven't been home since I was 18, so I'm excited about going back to Australia. Anyway, moving on. This one, if you're an MV Gusta fan, this is one of the ones to have. They are definitely worth quite a bit these days. That the MV is running or continuing. F4, we just had 3 or 4 of these come in at Iconic. So we have some newer ones and some older ones. This one has an exhaust on it. These sound incredible. Been a big fan of these for as long as I can recall. This is Daniel's track bike. So whenever we do track days, he usually brings this one. That's why he runs a stock exhaust, because we're typically at Laguna, so we have a sound issue. Moving on, GSXR, early, 86 probably. West Cooley, you've seen a couple of these at Iconic. Katana. Back when Katanas were super cool. The Suzuki's continue. He just added these, so these are new. He used Iconic Transport to get these here. Both are Suzuki RE5, so these are the rotary powered Suzukis. The one that I like the best is this one. So if you do this, you turn this little key like this. Watch this. Ah, that's so rad. That alone is a justification to buy this bike. And to keep the whole cylinder look going, it's got the cylinder tail light. Rotary powered bikes. Never really took off, but everyone made one. Or I should say a few brands made them. Norton had one, Suzuki had one. Really neat. A couple GT750s. These are triple T-strokes, also known as water buffaloes or tea kettles. I've heard a couple different names. One of these he bought from us. I think he's still painting it, a purple one. Another one, and oh, there it is. This is the one he picked up from us, but he's getting it all painted. We found that one in South Africa for him. And there's the color that a lot of people look for, right there, that blue. Moving on, Bull Taco. Really neat company. My brother had one when I was a little kid out of K80. He had a Bull Taco and left me in the dust every single time. So, keeping some really neat bikes. This is a really trick Honda. Aero exhaust. Really cool wheels. Like Freddie Spencer's signature there, I believe.
Yeah.
BSA. One thing I like about Daniel's collection over some collectors is that he mixes it up. Got some cool signage. This bike shows has been #1. I posted about it before. Some people questioned some weird things about it or whatever, but either way, super neat bike. He likes VIN #1 bikes. This one has some miles on it. RC45, of course, fuel injected. Basically the evolution of the RC30. I just mentioned this BSA. Let's go over here. BMWs. I am not going to tell you much about BMWs because I don't know much about them. I just know my partner Abby and one of my best buddies, Jay from Rhode Island, are huge fans, and they can tell you everything about them. So every time I need help, I just rely on those guys. BSAs continue. Rocket 3, he's got a couple of them. This bike, I forget the provenance on it, but I believe it might have been a Jake Zemke bike, but I'm not for sure. There's a picture of Duhamel there, so who knows? Moving on, it's gonna take me a minute. Some Yamahas, ooh, an MH900. This one's been here for a while. We have a couple of these over at Iconic, a couple of 0 mile ones, actually close to 0 miles anyway. This one is 100% stock and low mileage if I recall. BSA, Triumph, Benelli. Gotta love the colors. This here, I don't know that one too well. It's a Norton, but a lot of the European dealerships were branding bikes themselves, so probably what that is. John Player bikes are really neat. I've always been a big John Player fan. My friend has a John Player edition Desmo Sedici, custom made, and it's really rad. Gotta love the front ends of these John Players. They're so crazy. See that coming behind you, you don't know what you're looking at. 850 Commando Nortons. My buddy Darko had one of these, and I rode it around for a bit, a yellow one. Fun bike, exceptionally hard to kickstart. Another one, and another one. This is one of our really good clients from way back when at Iconic. Daniel said we could leave it here. He's a mate of mine in New Zealand that left his bike with me many years ago, and Daniel is keeping it on display at his place. And seeing how full Iconic is right now, we might be having a few more bikes coming this way. So as I said before, he's a big Norton fan, so let's continue the tour here before it gets too busy. The 750 Commandos continue. 850 Commando. 750 Commando. Actually, you know what? Everyone cleared up out over here, so I'm going to show you one of his prized possessions. Bro Superior. This one has some cool provenance. He's ridden it as well, which is neat. I asked him, I said, what's in the case? What came with that? And he said nothing. So either way, still pretty neat. It's got a whole bunch of Lawrence of Arabia stuff to go with it. These bikes are worth quite a bit, and just a true work of art. If money was no object, I would most certainly have one of these in the house. Okay, let's move on. Little scooter. Let's move on this way, and then we'll head back over to the Italian Row. So I showed you all those Nortons over there. The Nortons continue. So Commando 750. Hey, John.
Hey. Working that way.
More Commando again. As I said before, he's a big Norton fan. They continue. And much like Nortons, they all have drop cloths underneath them. And here's the really cool Hondas. I'm a big fan of this section myself. The CBs are really popular right now. Once again, in the Japanese market especially. I get a lot of requests for those. He's got some really nice examples. And multiple colors. No Honda collection's complete without a Honda CBX, the big 6-cylinder. We have one right now. We've got to finish fixing up, put it on the auction site. We have another one that we just finished for a customer with a 6-to-6 exhaust and flat slide carbs that has a sound to it that no other bike can emulate. This is neat. Rich Oliver's old bike, his old TZ. Daniel used to sponsor him. So Daniel has a lot of history with motorcycles, obviously, beyond just collecting. He sponsored some really great riders. He's helped a lot of really great guys out there. He knows them all. Rich Oliver specifically, he helped the team. These are so cool. I always like the way the back tail section kind of hugs the wheel. It's just a neat look. Sabatini paint. Gosh, I remember those guys. Gotta love it. Moving on, Indian Scout. It's got some really cool special pieces that are one-off bikes as well. And he could tell you way more about them than I ever could. But each one has a story. I used to watch these things run, or something like these, run over the Costa Mesa track. Watch them go sideways on these things. The crazy chain drive. It's nuts. Moving on, another Norton. This one's especially cool as well. In the front, I'll get back to Italian bikes in a minute. Desmo Sedici, D16RR. If you follow Iconic, you know that we sold quite a few of these, or a handful of them, I should say. I've ridden a bunch. By far my favorite Ducati. It's just perfect. It handles right. It's super stable. It's not great in the super twisty stuff because it's just such a handful, but it's just awesome. We have a couple of them that might be coming to Iconic soon. This one is number 625, and he starts it every once in a while. Some cool memorabilia, Cowie signs, an old dyno. Gosh, I remember these machines. Show how things have changed. Let's continue it on the old, mostly British bikes and Italian bikes on this side. The Triumphs. This one's special, X75. This bike was modeled after, it was actually featured in a magazine here. There's the exhaust system. Gotta love it. Moving on. Tricolore 851. Kirker exhaust. It's got a bunch of Motas. A couple of those Motas are actually zero, or VIN number 01, I should say. Number 1, I mean. Another Vincent. Go ahead of the time they were with their crazy fork setup. Just the way the pipes are all routed. Cool symbols everywhere. Need to do carb work? No problem. It's right there. I haven't ridden a bike this old yet, but I will one day. It's back when you can adjust timing on the fly and all these other kind of controls. It's funny what comes down and goes around. That was old tech now, and nowadays you can change mapping, which is essentially what you could do back then. Tessie 1D with that hub-centric front steering. We have a couple of these. 750 Ducati, these are really cool. Junior racer right there, getting ready for his race career. Can't wait to watch you on the track, young man. Oshkosh Race Team. Another 888, 851. Fast by Faraci, as you know, whenever I talk about classic Ducatis, Fast by Faraci is my brand. That's the brand I like the most. Terminioni is cool, but this is a full passion-based brand that I'm a big fan of. These are trouble. These three gentlemen here, including my new Aussie mate that rode with us last year and riding with us again this year. Super light. Another really cool sought-after Ducati. He's got two of them. So talked about sending one over to the auction site for Iconic. He doesn't typically have two of the exact same bike. 888. 996. This is a really nice one as well. Moving on. This is, I believe this is number 1, if I remember right. Yeah, it is. So it's a 748L, bike number 1. Ducati doesn't always put they don't typically have their badge numbers to go in sync with their VIN numbers, but it's still neat. It was the first one. The L bikes were Neiman Marcus bikes, featured in the catalog. Typically rather expensive. Not too different than the regular stock bike, other than the color. He's got a Hypercycle jacket on there from our friend Carrie Andrew, another talented individual. There you go. Again, there's a 748L I was talking about. So much like the Ducati Matrix, these are mostly just livery and paint jobs. Speaking of a Senna, they went a little bit further with a Senna. We have one at Iconic right now that's giving us some issues, but gotta love the colors. Obviously named after the racer, but this one has some miles on it. Bunch of carbon fiber. This is an MV Senna. I love these. My really close mate and big client, Sonny, has a nice collection. He's got a couple different Sennas, both of which came from Iconic, and every time I see one, I think of him. 300 made. The cool thing about MV is when they say 300 made, they made 300 made for the world. Sometimes on Ducati they do that, and they do it per country. So the Bostroms and the Baylisses, which he has over there, there's actually 150 Bostroms per country on a few different countries. So not as rare as people think, but still super cool. The yellow 748, one of the only bikes that pulls off yellow in my opinion. I had a 748R way back when. I bought brand new and loved it. Sold it on Iconic as well. 996, Terminioni exhaust, 996R. This is the hot ticket. So when you're talking about Ducatis, Supermonos, Desmo Sedicis, and a 996R, 998R, that to me is the quintessential coolest ducks. One of the neat things I did back then is the carbon fiber kind of came through the letters. Bunch of carbon. This one's got barely any miles on it. Really valuable bike. We actually have one in customs right now that should be to us in a couple weeks. These cool vents in the tail section. Carbon fiber fairings. You can see it all coming through here. Just a beautiful bike. Again, it's one of my favorites. The green tack. It's just so sick. Ben Bostrom bikes, you know, these are funny. They painted them after the, Ben Bostrom basically had a hand in spec'ing it out. These weren't wildly popular for a while at Iconic when we first started, and now everybody wants one. And so definitely they come up. See how it says one of 155? They actually made those, there you go. See how it says USA? That's because they made them for a few different countries. So they're not as rare as people think they are, but they're still really neat. The US versions had carbon fiber side fairings, and in Europe I think they had fiberglass. It was unfortunate, but some sort of a regulation issue, I think. This is a Bayliss. These are actually even more desirable than the Bostrom. I don't know, I think it's because it has the cool tie to one of the coolest riders in the world. Not to say that Bostrom isn't, but Troy Bayliss is one of my idols. All the tanks come signed. Has this really bitchin' PlayStation remote on there. Angel's one of our mechanics. Now that he's such a big PlayStation video game fanatic, I always think of him when I see these now, which is funny. Another really sought after bike. Made 400 of these. It's an S trim, so you'll see Olin suspension, Brembo brakes, that sort of thing. 999Ss. You know, these are the stepchild of Ducatis for a long time, and people are starting to finally start to look for them, and they should. I've ridden a few of them. They don't have that really cool single-side swing arm everybody's looking for, but for me, they just ride just wonderfully. And for taller riders, such as myself, they're actually quite comfortable. You can do a lot to them. They sound good with the right exhaust. This is the one everybody wants, the Fila or the Xerox. The Fila has the cool different wheels, the front red, back blue, which goes with the paint. The Xerox is a little bit more desirable. He doesn't have one here. This one's number 14, low number. Great bikes. I think the number plates kind of break up the paint a little bit, makes it a little more bearable. And of course 1098R, which another one of my favorites. I say that a lot, I know. I've had a lot of 1098Rs myself. They're fantastic. The R models have the tie rods. They spin up a little faster. Just super capable bike. One of the earlier electronic bikes. So the R model had a bit more electronics than most bikes did back then. Came out the same year that Desmo Sedici came out, or thereabouts. 450 made. We sold a few at Iconic. It's back when the economy kind of took a plunge, so it was probably a bad time to launch such an expensive bike, but still really cool. Last row is some more race bikes. A cool dirt bike. Bunch of Bermudas. TJ's dog. Hello, TJ. TJ's dog. SB8R Bermuda. SB6R. This, by the way, let me go back to this for 1 second. SB8R is the one with a TLR motor. I went nuts when I first saw this as a young guy. Carbon fiber frame was just all about something different. Great motors. If you ride one, especially on the taller side, you sit here in the seat, and these tubes, this low windscreen, make it impossible to see the gauges, but they're cool. Part of the ram air system. I don't really know if it does much, but it's cool. SB6. Once again, the first letter shows you who makes the engine, so it's a Yamaha. Obviously a Suzuki TL motor. Different displacements, 1000. Moving on, YB11. How you doing? And of course, some Moto Guzzi's to round it all out. I've been sold by my buddy Jay and my partner Abby on Guzzi's. I am now a big fan. I really want a MG SO1. I think that's how you say it, but they're a little bit too expensive. Cool bikes, really neat, and people seem to keep them for a long time. Anyway, there's the Daniel Schoenewald Collection. Starting to get a bit busy here today. He opens it up once a year as an open house. I'm gonna go visit some of my mates and see the family in a little bit. There you have it. Thank you for having us, Daniel. Always fun.